Everybody, welcome to our next episode of Lunchtime Chat Live. We're going to give it a minute or two here so that it will populate out and let everyone know that we are live. So bear with me. We'll get started here in just a minute. And if you're watching the replay after this is over, still feel free to comment. I always do check back on those. So just put your comments in, and we'll get those looked at. All right. I think we've given everyone enough time here. So again, welcome back to Walt Disney World Lunchtime Live. This is episode 7. And again, if you're watching live or catching the replay, I am glad that you're here. And if you missed last week's episode, we started doing something pretty fun. I took a deep dive into some of the coolest, funnest, quirkiest, most surprising, like, did you know Disney facts? We covered the wave machine at the Polynesian, Mr. Toad's final resting place, and even some of the hidden secrets on Main Street and Walt's office on Main Street. So we got through, excuse me. I actually had a whole list of things that I wanted to cover last week because I really love the whole, hidden history and secret facts and stuff. That's actually why I got into this in the first place. So this is really up my alley. I enjoy talking about this stuff. So we got about a third of the way through my list that I had just thrown together earlier that morning. So we're gonna pick up on that list where we left off. So we're gonna dedicate this episode once again to some more fun facts and hidden history about Walt Disney World. So jump in the chat if you have a fun fact that you know. I always love learning more. So if there's something you're thinking, hey, I wonder if he knows about this one, throw it in the chat. Let me know. Or if you're watching the replay, throw it in the comments. I love finding out new little tidbits about Walt Disney World. That is just, it's my bread and butter for why I'm doing this. So, but again, jump in. Let me know where you're watching in from. That's always cool to see who's checking in from different parts of the country or all over the world. And if you like this kind of stuff, if you like talking Disney, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. That way you're never missing any of our new Disney content. In addition to the Lunchtime Lives, I also do ride POVs, resort tours, walkthroughs, planning tips, dining reviews. We do a little bit of everything here at the Sorcerer's Vault. So, check some of those out. And I brought something up last week and I want to revisit that again as well. So I'm toying with the idea of changing this from a Wednesday afternoon thing to a different time frame. So are you guys online more or be able to check it out more if we did it in, say, the evenings or on a different day or on the weekend? My whole purpose with this chat is to make it a chat. So I want to develop this to where it's more Q&A and you guys can ask questions. I'll answer whatever I can. But that's kind of where I want this to evolve into. So in trying to find out what works best for you guys, let me know if this time slot works or if something else might work a little bit better for you. So with that said and done, let's get back into our list of Disney fun facts. And in my notes, I actually had a teaser for it in the little intro, and I kind of wanted to just save it. So we did spend some time last week talking about Epcot and the sinkhole, a couple different things like that. So this one that I want to get into today is the original plans for World Showcase. So a lot of you guys know the history of Epcot and Walt's vision that he wanted Epcot to actually be a functional working city. That was his intent. Magic Kingdom was going to be the side attraction, and the whole focus of the quote unquote Florida project was Epcot, Walt's vision of a city of the future, experimental prototype community of tomorrow. So when part of his plans for this was not only the Walt was a very futuristic person, or a very future forward person. He loved technology and how things could be used to advance, life now. But he also loved people, he loved cultures, and he wanted to incorporate a permanent World's Fair inside his city of tomorrow, his community of tomorrow. Then the untimely passing of Walt before they were even finished building Magic Kingdom, threw the whole thing into chaos, right? So the Imagineers were left struggling with trying to figure out how to do, best serve Walt's wishes in his Epcot vision. But they kept going back and forth. Once they finally decided to make it a theme park, incorporating some of Walt's ideas, keeping it futuristic, but they still were trying to tackle this World's Fair thing. And there's actually several different options. And a lot of the earlier ones were more geared towards the World's Fair being its own separate park or own separate entity somewhere on property. One of the early thoughts was, like I said, make it its own separate entity, but the placement of where they thought they were going to do it, that's the secret. That's what's actually kind of interesting. So one of the original plans was to have the World's Fair, or we'll just call it what it is now, World Showcase, but it was actually going to be on the banks of the Seven Seas Lagoon across from Magic Kingdom. So if you're looking at it from the parking lot and coming up to Transportation and Ticket Center, the World Showcase actually would have been to the right of that, between the TTC and what is now Wilderness Lodge. That was one of the original plans for World Showcase. And I don't know if I showed you guys this last week, but I do love Disney history. I love learning about this stuff. If you guys ever get a chance to pick up this one, lots of good, fun tidbits in here. But let's see if I can scan this up in here. So that was one of the original thoughts. So you can see Magic Kingdom in the background there. In the foreground, you have what was a artist rendering of World Showcase at that time. So not a lot of people are aware that, World Showcase may have been its own separate park, and you would have been able to see Cinderella Castle from World Showcase. What you also notice in that is there was 2 semicircles. Another early draft or the concept art for that was so that it was more like a shopping mall type experience. So every different country would be part of a pie slice. And they would all have the same square foot frontage to this pie slice. And get my little book back out here. I love this book. So the big picture up here, that is what it would have looked like. So I can't. There we go. So each different nation would be part of this type of shopping mall where everybody would have the same frontal space, going around these crescent shapes, or the pie slices. Now, what is different or unique about that, or what could end up being unique about each country, is there was no real limit to how far back they could go. Excuse me. So while each area would have its own same front facing footage. Yeah, we'll go with that. They could expand out the back of their pie slice pretty much not indefinitely, but for as much room as they needed. So that way, each country was equal in presentation in the front of it, but could expand back. The other part of that, if you saw, um, the front half of that would all have been indoors. So if you think about World Showcase today compared to what could have been, a lot of it would have been indoors, air conditioned, which we know Florida in the summer, that would have been fantastic as far as that. Um, but they ultimately decided to not go with that route. And after many different iterations and blue sky planning, they finally made the decision to create one park with two separate sections, Future World, and yep, I still call it Future World, and World Showcase. Um, and then one of the other things that helped shape how it was now, we talked about the sinkhole last week and how they had to dig out and clear out space. And part of that, so the story goes into World Showcase Lagoon. One of the, before they found that out and decided to go that route, one of the other options was to have those two half moon shapes, one in front of the other. So it almost be like seating at a theater venue, how it kind of arcs around. So you would have the front countries, and then you have to walk around those to get to the back countries. That was another different iteration. But thankfully, they, with the help of a sinkhole, they made the decision to create the Showcase Lagoon, which created, all the countries around it. And that's how we ended up with what World Showcase is today, instead of something separate over by Magic Kingdom. And I think they ended up with the best option because it just worked out perfectly. Now, speaking of World Showcase Lagoon, we're going to stay on this topic here for a minute. At its peak, over 20 different countries were considered for inclusion in World Showcase. There was a few that actually made it past the initial blue sky planning, made it to concept art, model makeups, and even in some cases, they started preparing the land. But these are those countries that were not ended up included was Spain, Israel, Venezuela, Soviet Union or Russia, and Equatorial Africa. Now, most of these didn't end up coming to fruition because when Disney started World Showcase, they needed the government of that country to help sponsor the building of the country. And if you've ever been to World Showcase now, a lot of the workers in World Showcase are from that country. So biggest thing ended up being sponsorship, that they couldn't come to agreements with these other countries to finance these options. But some of the things, like, you kind of walk past and you still see a little bit of what could have been. So if you think about where some of the spaces exist, between Germany and Italy was a space for a country, and also between China and Germany, if you walk through there even now, you have like the African markets, the little refreshment stands, the gift shop things. Um, they actually started theming that out for Africa because they wanted to test how the colors work, what the sight lines were. So that one actually progressed pretty far into the planning phase. But again, because of sponsorships, they ended up falling through and we didn't get those countries. There's actually several more that made it to some talks, but I don't have that list right in front of me at the moment. So we're going to move on and we're going to talk about another cool what could have been. And we're going to stay in Epcot, and specifically, we're going to stay in World Showcase, and we're going to talk about the Japan Pavilion. So, in the early plans for the Japan Pavilion, it was actually built into the plans for Japan to have its own attraction. It was going to be a Matterhorn type style ride through Mount Fuji. And if you're standing at the entrance, or in the middle of the Japan pavilion, and you look towards the back, you see the large building that was actually going to be part of the ride. They had actually gone as far as building the building space out for the load and unload dock. The queue area was, the infrastructure was there. Um, so why did we not get a Mount Fuji ride? So there's a couple stories floating around. One, it definitely has to do with budget cuts. Another one is, and this one is more the official story. So Fujifilm was actually interested in sponsoring the attraction. And the only problem was, if you don't know, Fujifilm was a film company, not film like movies, film like you used to take with your camera. Kids, ask your parents what that means. Not everything was digital. Um, so the problem was that Disney had already had a really strong partnership with Kodak, and they had sponsored attractions like Journey into Imagination, and they had a very heavy marketing presence throughout the park. And apparently, Kodak was not thrilled with the idea that a major competitor like Fuji was going to get a showcase attraction in a prime spot at Epcot. So they ended up kind of putting the pressure on Disney. Disney cancels the agreement with Fujifilm, but unfortunately, we lose the option for a Mount Fuji Matterhorn ride. So that's the story with that. So next time you walk through Japan, take a look back, and the building is there. They did not build, obviously, the Mount Fuji mountain itself, but they had the ride show building ready. They had the queue, the unload. Everything was set up to add the coaster in, but tensions between sponsors and some budget cuts led to us not getting a Mount Fuji roller coaster. So one other cool World Showcase one that never came to be is the Rhine River Cruise Ride. So this was going to be a slow, gentle boat ride through the Rhine River, and it was going to be in the Germany Pavilion. And if you go today, you can still see what should have been the entrance. So walk directly to the back of the Germany Pavilion. And oh man, I had brain lapse there. So the back building there, you go left to check in for dining, but if you're looking straight at it, there's a big flat wall with an arch at the top of it. So that archway was going to be the entrance to the Rhine River Cruise Ride. But when they, once again, budget cuts, weren't able to end up building that ride, they just put a false wall up there and they just closed it off. So that's another what could have been in Epcot. So we could have had a Germany ride, we could have had a Japan ride, but unfortunately just didn't come to be. So let's move on and let's leave Epcot for a minute. Kind of. So my next one I've got, everybody remembers the Wonders of Life Pavilion, right? If you don't, do your homework. I'm just kidding. So it's the big golden dome that kind of sits between Mission Space and Guardians of the Galaxy. It's currently used for exhibits and different things like that, but it was an interactive pavilion about the human body. You had Body Wars, the Cranium Command. So everybody kind of remembers that. But if you remember, in the entrance it was unmistakable, the Wonders of Life DNA strand sign that kind of went across the pavilion. Now, with that pavilion closing in the early 2000s, Disney did what Disney loves to do, and they took the sign down and they repurposed it. So what you don't know, and what's cool about this, is where they put it. So obviously it's not going to say, Wonders of Life anymore. But that sign has been repurposed and now says Magic Kingdom, And if you are driving into Magic Kingdom, specifically going to go park, that sign stretches across the parking lanes as you come up to the turnstiles, or where you pay for your parking. So that has been repurposed, and the Wonders of Life sign now greets guests into Magic Kingdom. So that was a cool little tidbit that I can't remember where I found that out, but again, as I said, I love these little tidbits. And while I'm rambling on here, I invite you again, if you've got a cool tidbit that you don't think I might know, or something that, hey, this is my cool one that I really, you just want to put out there, drop it in the chat and we'll talk about it. So let's leave Epcot officially now. And now we'll head over to Animal Kingdom. And we got a couple over here that I want to talk about. Starting with the main attraction, which is the Tree of Life. So most people know it. It's the park's icon, beautiful tree, over 300 different animals carved into its trunk. But what you might not know is what is underneath all that artistry and all those carvings. At the heart of the Tree of Life is actually an oil rig. So the structure that supports the Tree of Life is actually the skeleton of an offshore oil drilling platform. Why an oil rig? Well, Disney needed a structure that could do a very few specific things. So, number one, it had to support all of the branches and all of the concrete work that they were going to put around it. Had to be very wind resistant and stable. But it also had to allow for the theater to be built inside. So if you Google this and if you look at it, it has like a ring around it with a giant opening in the middle. And that opening was big enough that they could put the Bugs Life, It's Tough to Be a Bug theater inside that. So next time you're there, all of the wood that you see around the tree, that's all just concrete artistry. It was applied after and on top of the steel beams of this oil rig. So what started as an oil rig for in the middle of the ocean ended up being the Tree of Life in the middle of Animal Kingdom. So that's a cool one. The other one, and this one kind of makes its way around. I see it come back in waves. People will talk about it for a couple of months and then it disappears again for quite some time. But this is another what could have been, and it's the land that never was at Animal Kingdom. So that's right. We're talking about Beastly Kingdom. So this is one of the most intriguing what could have beens. This was supposed to be part of the Animal Kingdom lineup from day one. Now, unfortunately, like all things, there's always budget cuts. Disney plans something fantastic, and you see the blue sky, the concept art, and then what you get is sometimes maybe a watered down version. Well, unfortunately, in this case, the watered down version was this land being left out completely. And if you look at the actual plaque for the dedication for Animal Kingdom, it talks about they want to celebrate animals in all forms, real, extinct, and imaginary. And if you look at the front gate all the way over to the left, there's still a dragon that welcomes you in to Animal Kingdom. Now, they started phasing them out, but a lot of the park benches still had the old Animal Kingdom logo featuring the dragon on them. So there was a lot of planning that went into this that unfortunately didn't come to pass. So, Africa and Asia took care of the real animals. Dino Land took care of the extinct animals, and then Beastly Kingdom was going to take care of the mythological or the imaginary animals. We're talking dragons, unicorns, griffins, things like that. There was going to be the dragon themed roller coaster. There's a whole bunch of different things. There was got to be a maze, Quest for the Unicorn, where you'd have to work your way through a maze. But what could have been? But like I said, so budget constraints hit, and this was going to they cut out Beastly Kingdom in phase 1. It was going to be introduced in phase 2, which was supposed to begin work or be open a year or two after Animal Kingdom opened. But unfortunately, that expansion just never came. But we still have remnants. So Beastly Kingdom was replaced by what was supposed to be the temporary Camp Minnie and Mickey. Now, as we all know, that ended up being a lot more than temporary, and it was semi-permanent. But if you were to walk across the bridge there, and it's kind of overgrown at this point. I tried looking for it last time, and it took a little minute. But on the bridge over, for those that don't know, Camp Minnie Mickey ended up getting taken down and was replaced by Pandora. So I'll get back to my point here in a second. So we technically still have the imaginary animals as part of Animal Kingdom's, dedication plaques, because all of the animals from Pandora obviously are not real. So they're still living up to the, real, extinct, and imaginary. Well, extinct for now because Dino Land's going bye-bye. But so Pandora replaced Camp Minnie Mickey, which was supposed to be where Beastly Kingdom was. So if you're walking across the bridge, getting back to my point here, if you're walking across the bridge to Pandora, if you look off the right-hand side, just past Tiffin's, and you're looking across the water, over on the far side there is a stone dragon head that used to breathe smoke. But that was one of the greeting things to Beastly Kingdom. So I kind of wish that they hadn't gone or hadn't cut that out. Unfortunately, a side note, a lot of the Imagineers that were working on Beastly Kingdom, some of them did end up leaving Disney and went over to Universal. And if you go to Universal, I know this is a Disney chat, but if you go to Universal, a lot of those Imagineers ended up working on the Lost Continent portion of Universal, which ties into a lot of the things that they were originally wanting to do with Beastly Kingdom, as far as layout and theming, things like that. So yeah, there's still signs of Beastly Kingdom throughout Animal Kingdom. So that's a tough one that I wish they would have stuck with, but unfortunately it just did not come to fruition. I got just enough time for maybe one more here, and we'll stick with Animal Kingdom, and we're going to go over and talk about Everest real quick. And specifically, we're going to talk about the Disco Yeti. If you're unfamiliar with Everest or the Disco Yeti, so when you ride Everest, at some point during the ride, you pass by the huge lumbering figure of the Yeti. Now, when the ride first opened, the Yeti would actually lunge out at you, creating more of an intense feeling during Everest. Not that Everest needs to feel more intense, but you get the point. Unfortunately, the Yeti only worked for a short period of time. The Yeti has been broken almost since the beginning, and unfortunately, it's never going to get fixed. So he stands about 20 feet tall, but like I said, he would lunge out at you. The problem was they made a mistake in planning on what the forces of the Yeti's lunging action would do, not to the Yeti itself. The Yeti itself is actually perfectly fine and could still operate. The problem is the foundation that the Yeti stands on has cracked. Now, what sucks here is this is a three-part system. So you have the ride structure itself, you have the Yeti and the foundation, and then you have the mountain basically sitting on top of the ride. So all of these things have to work together for it to work perfectly. The problem lies in being able to get to the foundation and get to the Yeti to fix it and make it work. Unfortunately, it's not like they can just go through. It's not like they can go through a back door and access the Yeti to be able to do what they need to do to fix it. They would actually have to take off part of the mountain to be able to fix this properly. So unfortunately, we all know that Animal Kingdom is a little more limited on, what rides they have available. Hopefully, with Tropical America's coming, that'll fix some of that. But getting off on a tangent. To be able to fix the Yeti, they have to take off part of the mountain, and then it would be down for not just months, it would be down for probably a year or two to be able to go in and actually fix it. And then they would have to put the mountain back on top of the part where the Yeti sits. So unfortunately, it's just not cost efficient for Disney to do this. So where it comes in, where I mentioned Disco Yeti, the short-term solve was that they put a strobe light on the Yeti so that when you pass it, it's flashing to imitate movement, even though the Yeti no longer moves. And the strobing light instantly made some guest coin it as Disco Yeti, and that name has kind of stuck ever since. So that is the story of Disco Yeti and how that ride is in a permanent B mode. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. I would actually get into B mode a little bit more because there are a lot of rides that have an A and a B mode, but that's something we can get into in another day. But so yeah, that's the story of the Disco Yeti. But that's going to wrap up today's round of Disney Did You Know Fun Facts, and that's going to close out this lunchtime live chat. So, we covered more about Epcot, some, what could have been things. If you join me live, I really like that you chose to hang out with me today. If you're watching the replay, still love to hear from you again. Drop a comment and let me know what you think. If you've got a fun fact you'd like to share, or something just surprised you the most. And again, if you like this kind of stuff, if you like Disney planning, rides, things like that, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next content. There's always something new, interesting. I've got, a lunchtime live every week. We've got ride POVs coming out every week, usually something resort related. Try to do a little bit of everything here at the Sorcerer's channel. But again, thanks for spending part of your day with me. Enjoy the rest of your week. And as always, we'll see you real soon.